guys and gals, and welcome to the SIP Shelter in Place series on the STIR podcast, brought to you by Gazelle Media. I'm your host, Trish Muyco-Tobin, and right here with me is my co-host, my Binge Bestie, author and movie maven extraordinaire, Debbie Baldwin. Hello, Debbie.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Trish. Thanks for having me.
Happy September.
Happy September. We're here.
Remember, okay, I'm not going to sing the whole song, but every time it's September, it's the occasion to sing that song. I just love that song. It makes me happy. So have we got a binge list for you this week? This not only goes out to you bona fide romantics out there, but if you enjoy a smartly written comedy, and also, as you'll find out, a couple of these films really, span genres. We've got some suspense here, but overall, we are talking today about 11 great rom-coms, romantic comedies you probably haven't seen. Isn't that right, Debbie?
That's right. I, kind of scoured my memory banks, and every once in a while, you really want to watch. When everyone thinks romantic comedy, they think Pretty Woman. Like there's maybe 5 that jump into people's heads.
Sure. Love Actually. I mean, really obvious ones. Yeah.
And then you're kind of like there's got to be some out there that I don't know about. And so hopefully we've dug up a few.
Well, what excites me in particular about this list, as we were talking about prior to coming on here, about half these movies I haven't seen. So I really have something to look forward to after we go off the air here. And all of us, once we hear Debbie Baldwin's discussion and analysis of these films. And it's also great that we truly have a sampling here of some very excellent movies from a few decades, really. We begin here with the 1950s.
Yeah. And, these are all movies that really stand the test of time, too. I've rewatched a bunch of them happily.
Yes.
They really are some timeless films. Some of them are dated, but we'll talk about it.
That's what you kind of like about it. You get a slice of life from that particular decade. And I think that kind of adds to the coolness factor of some of these films.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to begin. Again, these are 11 great rom-coms you probably have not seen. We are going to begin in the late 50s, 1958 to be exact. And we're going to talk about the film Indiscreet, and that is starring Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman.
Indiscreet is such a fantastic, inventive romantic comedy, because to be that clever back when that genre was so young is really refreshing. And this story features Ingrid Bergman as an accomplished stage actress who meets an economist who's played by Cary Grant. And they are instantly attracted to one another. And he almost immediately informs her that he is trapped in a loveless marriage that he cannot escape. So that if their relationship is to continue, it has to be this very, an affair without commitment, or I guess legal commitment.
Yes.
And they are slowly falling in love. She agrees to the situation. And lo and behold, one of her friends discovers fairly early on in the film that he is not married, that he is an investigator with Scotland Yard who has no interest in marriage. So he has invented this story to eliminate any expectations from the women that he sees.
Any entanglements, any hassles.
Yes.
Yes.
And so that is the big twist. The unforgettable line in the movie is when Ingrid Bergman finds out the truth and looks at her friend and says, "How dare he make love to me and not be a married man?" This movie is funny. It's charming. She conspires to get him back. He realizes he's in love with her and now wants to marry her. So it's this whole comedy of errors. It's enjoyable on every level. It's smart. Her costumes alone are worth watching the movie for. It's really, really a great film.
So I hear this is apparently the film that launched Ingrid Bergman as a major fashion plate.
Yes.
And the chemistry between these two, though, I mean, they previously starred in Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious, and then followed by this film, which was directed by Stanley Donen. Apparently, the studio originally wanted Clark Gable and either Marilyn Monroe or Jane Mansfield to star in this film. But when Stanley Donen, the director, was hired, Stanley apparently said, yes, I'll do it. But he stipulated that, but only with Cary. And so when they went to Cary Grant, he said, yes, I'll do it, but only with Ingrid Bergman. So, because, you know, the two had, as we said, previously starred in Notorious. And I'm so glad it worked out because according to Cary Grant himself, this film was his personal favorite out of that vast filmography. This was his film.
It's a fantastic film. It's not the only film on our list where Cary Grant has a hidden identity, but this one is for sure one of my favorites.
Yes, yes. And so from 1958, we're going to jump on over to the next decade, a few years over, and we're going to go to 1963. And as you mentioned, Cary Grant, new leading lady, though, the chemistry is still there. My gosh, undeniable chemistry. And this time, Mr. Grant is paired with Audrey Hepburn, same director, Stanley Donen.
And yes, for the movie Charade, which
Charade, yes.
Absolutely a go-to film. I mean, it's Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn, and it's a romantic suspense story. It has a big element of mystery to it with a missing fortune and this old World War II gold that's gone missing during, you know, in the French Resistance, and everybody's after this money. And Audrey Hepburn, who was married to a man who was integral in this theft, who has since been killed, doesn't know where the gold is or have any information about it, but these men all seem to think she does. Enter Cary Grant, who appears to her in a variety of different aliases. There is... and she, despite his suspicious behavior where he's, oh, you know, I told you my name was Peter, but it's really Brian or Alex.
Alexander, yeah. I mean, it goes on and on.
Right, throughout the chase. And the supporting roles.
What an impressive supporting cast.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic story with a very intelligent mystery plot. So you've got this great romance going on with these two. I mean, they're both really magical to watch on screen all the time.
Wow.
And then on top of it all, you get a great, you know, really great suspense story going on too.
Yes, and so it checks all the boxes, Deb. My gosh, this to me is the perfect movie because you have this just really hot chemistry between those two. And we talked about that supporting cast. And also, I mean, I'm into soundtracks. And I love the score for this movie. I mean, you say Charade, you think of that song, you think of that score, Henry Mancini, and of course, the song with lyrics by Johnny Mercer. And even like just the opening credits itself, it is so ultra cool 60s with the animation. I mean, it is just so fun to watch and you're so into it. Like we said, you know, it's got romance, it's got suspense, it's got a whodunit. This film has actually been described as the best Hitchcock movie Alfred Hitchcock never made.
Right.
Yeah, because it has such, you know, that feel to it.
Yeah.
One thing though that I did not realize until recently, this film was released in December 1963, and that was just weeks after President Kennedy's assassination. And if you recall in the film, there's a line in the movie where Audrey Hepburn says, "At any moment we could be assassinated." And so the filmmakers tried to change that just to, show some respect with what happened with the president. And they actually dubbed over the line, "At any moment we could be eliminated," instead of assassinated. The fix was not subtle at all, though, and it stood out in the worst way. So they actually changed it back. So the folks who did not see the movie's first run will probably not even know that they tried to fix it. But now in later, showings, if you try to look it up, it will say we could be assassinated. And just FYI, this movie apparently is considered to be in the public domain. So you can see it and stream it for free on, let's see here, I wanna get this right, on Tubi TV, Tubi TV. So that is charade, and that's great for everybody to rewatch or to just discover this film. Oh, by the way, did you have a problem with Cary Grant being 59 and Audrey being 33? Because apparently Mr. Grant did. It really bothered him that there was a 25-year age difference. So they had to rewrite the script to actually have Cary Grant's character, refer to the age difference. What did you think?
I remember the mention of it. It never occurred to me watching it. So often in movies they play around with age. You think about all these characters playing teenagers who are really 30 or, but for this film, yes, it's a bit of a May December romance, but it never really registered that it was in any way inappropriate or it didn't put me off at all.
Okay.
I mean, he's so timelessly handsome.
I know.
They're just so together that they have such great chemistry on screen that you don't really. You don't.
All right. So speaking of spanning genres, our next film also fits the bill, and we're going to jump on over to the next decade. From 1963, we go to 1978, and we are going to talk about the film Foul Play. Debbie, this was such a fun movie, totally 70s, but I loved it.
I cannot tell you, this movie is in my Hall of Fame. So few films can pull off that comedy and, mystery aspect successfully. And this one does it so incredibly well. Goldie Hawn, who plays a recently divorced single woman, trying to start that great Barry Manilow song, "I'm Ready to Take a Chance Again," and
which pretty much dominates the film, the song, the score. It's wonderful.
No complaints about Barry on that.
No, not at all.
But so in her first adventure into new love, she meets a man on the side of the road who arranges a date with her and hands her a pack of cigarettes and says, "Hold on to these for me. I'm trying to quit. And if you keep them, I'll stick to my, regimen of only having one or two a day."
One pack a day, yeah.
She does. And she meets him at the movies the next night. He comes in and he's mortally wounded from a gunshot, sits next to her in the movie theater, says one thing to her, "Beware the dwarf," and dies. When Goldie Hawn runs out of the theater to get the manager to get him help, the body's disappeared. So thus begins this crazy thing where Goldie Hawn is trying to figure out what is going on. Everyone's after her. No one believes her because every time there's an incident, there's no evidence. Chevy Chase plays the San Francisco police officer who's investigating her claims, and their little romance ensues. But it's at the same time they're trying to solve the mystery of who this man was, what was going on, and of course Chevy Chase realizes late in the film that she is 100% telling the truth, that there's a big conspiracy going on, and he has to, save the day, and it's a really fun film.
And again, talk about chemistry between those two, Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn. This was really, for me personally, Deb, this was the film that opened my mind into maybe the possibility of Chevy Chase being a leading man, like a romantic lead, because of course he's been in many a film, but you always think about the comedy goofball that he is. But this one, I don't think he's ever been more handsome.
Yes.
This
totally
film really, And then talk about another excellent supporting cast.
Oh my God, it goes on and on.
Burgess Meredith.
Fantastic cameo as a sort of wannabe Lothario, who Goldie Hawn, appears at his door or in the bar asking him for help, and he brings her back to his over-the-top 70s.
Oh my God.
Burgess Meredith as her trusted neighbor. The cast is so deep with talent and comedy talent. It's really, really a great film.
And apparently this was Dudley Moore's American film debut. So it is worth your while if you haven't seen it. It's just worth to see him in that role. It is hilarious. So Deb, the screenwriter for this movie also directed it. His name's Colin Higgins. And a few years prior to the making of this film, have you heard this? So he was getting some work done in his backyard. He was trying to install a hot tub, and trying to build a deck in his backyard. So he hires a young carpenter to work on it, who was none other than Harrison Ford. Did you even know that he was a carpenter?
I didn't know that.
Okay, I did not know that. So, whoa. So fast forward to a few years later, Colin Higgins actually had written the screenplay for Foul Play with Harrison Ford in mind. But by this time, Harrison had already starred in Star Wars. He'd already starred in American Graffiti, already set to work on Empire Strikes Back, Apocalypse Now. Needless to say, Harrison Ford was busy. And so that got us Chevy Chase, and great for everybody.
That's a great story. Just imagining Harrison Ford building a deck in my yard.
The hot tub. Okay, so Harrison Ford's already Harrison Ford, and then he can build stuff. Oh my gosh! Wow.
I know. Talk about competency porn. It's like he can fix stuff.
Wow. Okay.
Twice as sexy.
No kidding. Speaking of, just to me, ageless, just perennially handsome, Harrison Ford is one of those guys too, like Cary Grant. All right, so we're gonna go into the 1980s, the mid-80s, 1985. And when you think about the 80s, you kind of think about this guy, John Cusack, in The Sure Thing, and his love interest in this film is Daphne Zuniga. And we also have a supporting role with Anthony Edwards from ER.
Yes, this is The Sure Thing. In 1985, John Cusack's really just starting his career. He debuted in 16 Candles. Yeah. And this was, I think, his first big film.
Oh, yeah.
He plays a college student. Anthony Edwards is his best friend from high school. John Cusack's character goes to the Northeast for college. Anthony Edwards' character goes to UCLA.
Yes.
So when John Cusack is at college in his sort of dreary, Northeastern, cold, it's bringing back all kinds of memories, he encounters a very intelligent, confrontational woman played by Daphne Zuniga, who she tutors him, and they're at odds from the beginning, but they are on when Anthony Edwards' character calls from LA and says, "You've got to get out here, I've got a sure thing for you."
Yes.
Meaning a woman who is willing, and a perfect 10. So John Cusack and Daphne Zuniga, who are both limited on funds and both need to get to LA, road trip out there together. And so it's the story of these two falling in love on this road trip while John Cusack's aim is to get out to LA and to meet the sure
and to
thing.
hook up with the sure thing.
Played by the legendary Nicolette Sheridan, who has a very small role, but a huge role in the, she's the title role.
She was the title role. Exactly. Yeah. So you mentioned that you were questioning whether this was Cusack first really starring role. And we can actually prove that because the director, Rob Reiner, initially refused to even meet with John Cusack, let alone hire him for this movie because he was underage. He was only 16, not even out of high school yet. So what actually had to happen was the producer, Roger Birnbaum, had to go to court to have him legally emancipated so that he could begin shooting on location. And so, yeah, he was 16, and Daphne Zuniga was actually almost 4 years older than John Cusack was at the time of this movie.
Well, it's a charming, adorable film, and John Cusack, who goes on to make this career out of being this sort of quirky, Lloyd Dobler, the guy everybody loves.
Yes.
And with sort of unconventional good looks, and he's perfect in this role. And it's just a very charming, funny movie with some real heart.
Yes. And so Cusack fans, hang on to your hats because he's going to make an appearance later on the list. First, we are going to 1990, and this was such a cute film, Green Card, with Gerard Depardieu. And Andie MacDowell, yes.
And this is a great film. I mean, Andie MacDowell, started off as a model, and then, and had a kind of a bumpy road to movie stardom. I think because of her modeling background, she
her looks got in the way, Deb.
Struggle for legitimacy. And I'm trying to remember. I think it was Andie MacDowell and Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan.
Oh gosh.
Voice. I might be confusing, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Anyway. In this film, Andie MacDowell, whose character's name is Bronte, because her father is an English literature professor and names all of the children after great authors.
Yes.
And it's a very simple premise. She wants this fabulous apartment with a rooftop garden. And Gerard Depardieu is an illegal immigrant in the U.S. from France, and he wants a green card. And so in order for her to qualify for this apartment with the board or whatever, she needs to be married.
Yes.
And so they arrange this marriage of convenience. He is a pig. He's lives for the moment. He eats whatever he wants.
A lovable oaf, though.
And you would imagine him when you picture him.
Yes.
He's indulgent, he drinks, she is this very rigid, very disciplined horticulturist who finds him repulsive. Yes. And it's just the story of them falling in love, and it's fantastic. And of course, with two such talented people, it is, because you struggle to overcome that hump of the disparity is so vast between them, but as they slowly kind of worm their way into each other's hearts, it's just such a fun film.
Funny how you mentioned some of the characteristics of Gerard's character in this movie, because the screenplay was written with him in mind. This was director Peter Weir's way of introducing Gerard Depardieu to an English-speaking audience. He was already a huge movie star in France, but this was his foray into the world of Hollywood and American films.
And you look at him and you think, seriously? This is the Robert Redford of France? You've got to be kidding me. 45 minutes into the film, you're in love with the guy. It's
oh
amazing.
my gosh, you totally get it. And there are glimpses of the real Gerard in the script. Like you say, he's sloppy and likes to indulge. The part about him, I don't know how to say, like frequenting prostitutes, is something that he was into back then. And also the fact that he is, he's into tattoos. And you see some of that in the film as well. He's explaining to her what the tattoos mean. So yes, just adorable film. I just love, and I was a little unsure about Andie MacDowell because I'm not very familiar with her work, and I thought, but it worked. Those two really worked well together.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to our next film, which was made 5 years later, still has a little, also a Parisian feel to it. And the movie was actually set in Paris. And that is the movie French Kiss with Kevin Kline and Meg Ryan.
This is a movie I love to pull out because very few people have seen it.
I haven't seen it. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It's really, I would say, the most traditional by-the-book romantic comedy that is on the list. Meg Ryan plays her typical,
pretty much herself, right?
She is.
I saw the trailer.
Right, and she is engaged to her fiance Timothy Hutton, played by Timothy Hutton, who is a doctor, and she is about to launch, her picture perfect as planned life. Very buttoned up, very organized. The film opens, she's packing his suitcase. He's going to a conference in France. She will not go with him because she has a crippling fear of flying. And, but he goes off to this conference, and lo and behold, 48 hours later, calls her from France and says he has fallen in love, that the engagement is off, he's not coming back. It's over. So Meg musters all of her courage and gets on the flight to go to France to win him back. And lo and behold, on the plane, on the international flight, is a Frenchman, like in Green Card, that she finds repulsive, sitting next to her in the seat. He shocks her with some conversation right at takeoff, which ends up distracting her from her fear. It's a very kind of sweet little moment and the Frenchman is played by Kevin Kline, which is a little bit of a black mark on this film because his French accent could be better. You have to really kind of let go if you've got a thing about accents, which I do, but you have to kind of go.
Yes, you do.
I know, I'm horrible. I can't stand it when they're terrible. They really ruins the movie. But this one, it's good enough that he can get by. But he agrees. He's got his own agenda. There's a little mystery going on with him. He's being pursued by the French police. He's a ne'er-do-well. He's the black sheep of his family. He's trying to help Meg Ryan win back her fiance. And of course, you can imagine what happens is the two of them.
Yes.
Meg Ryan realizes that Kevin Kline's character needs help too, so she agrees to help him with his family situation. Unbeknownst to her, he's smuggling a plant into the country illegally, and he's put it in her carry-on bag because she's the perfect dupe. No one's going to search her bags at customs. She's this blonde-haired, wide-eyed, innocent-looking girl. And so he has to stay with her to retrieve his little plant. And she, under the guise of helping her win back the Timothy Hutton character. So that's kind of how the plot unfolds.
Got it.
It's the most beautiful, beautiful film. The settings, the backdrops, I mean, if, we can't visit France right now for a
Right.
while, but feels like a trip to the Loire Valley or to Paris. It's just breathtakingly beautiful, every scene. In fact, Meg Ryan, at one point, Kevin Kline's character leads her down this little French cobblestone street lined with buildings, and she stops and she goes, wish you were here, like a postcard line. And it really is. The whole movie is as pretty as a postcard.
Okay, but you did take issue with that accent. You will find comfort in the fact that the role of Luke that eventually went to Kevin Kline was originally written, once again, with Gerard Depardieu in mind. But by that time, Depardieu was a bigger star than he was, and he was unavailable. So the role eventually went to Kevin Kline. It's really not a surprise because this film was directed by Lawrence Kasdan, and if that name sounds familiar, the director was a frequent collaborator of Kevin Kline's in the 80s and 90s with The Big Chill, I Love You to Death, Grand Canyon. So that's probably, behind the scenes workings of how that film ended up with Kevin Kline in the lead.
And he's such a great actor. He pulls it off, and he's so appealing in this film. It's exactly the right vibe for the character. So, and the accent's not horrible. It's just a little cartoony, if you know what I mean.
All right, so we're gonna jump into the 1990s, the late 90s actually, to a film that was released in 1998. And that is the film Sliding Doors. Deb, one of the films I have not seen, but I am so excited. It's on my list. And everybody, your attention, please. It is streaming for free at this time on Tubi TV. Tubi TV. So yeah, add this to your binge list.
I would say put this on the top of your movie list. It is one of the best movies that I have ever seen. It's brilliant. Gwyneth Paltrow and John Hannah star in this film, which basically runs two plot lines simultaneously. Gwyneth Paltrow is involved in a relationship. She's leaving work early. She gets fired, I think. And she meets an attractive man in the elevator leaving the building, played by John Hannah. When they get to the metro, she initially misses the train. Then the film, I think it's, I'm trying to recall if she makes the train or misses the train first, but it doesn't really matter. The film then rewinds and tells the exact same story had she made the train.
Yes.
So in the Make the Train story, she comes home and catches her live-in boyfriend in bed with another woman. Ends the relationship. So it's no job, no boyfriend, no man, and starts again. And she begins this romance with the John Hannah character. In the misses the train scenario, she does not catch the boyfriend in bed. She comes home, the mistress is gone, and everything unfolds, but in a very different way. And it's this exploration of love and timing and fate, and the acting is brilliant. John Hannah, who many people might remember from Four Weddings and a Funeral, is so charming and perfect in this role. Gwyneth Paltrow is just, it's just watch the movie. It's a great, great movie. And I'm not, dramas, it's a romantic drama, and it just captures you from the get-go. In the one scenario where she catches the boyfriend, her best friend suggests she cut off all of her hair to start fresh, to get a new look. So the two storylines are easy to differentiate because Gwyneth Paltrow's character looks very different in both of them. And there's certain little overlaps that happen. It's so carefully crafted and so well done. It's just one of those rare movies that you think, wow, this
Well,
was.
now I'm really intrigued because
Yeah.
this film had always been in my periphery, but didn't really know that much about the storyline.
Yeah.
But it sounds like something I would really enjoy. And when I was reading up on it, the director and screenwriter of this movie, Peter Howitt, he came up with the idea because he himself was almost struck by a car in London. And so he questioned what kind of trajectory his life would have taken had he been hit by that car. And
Well,
so
and
you
it's
have this
interesting, I think
inspiration.
people think that stuff all the time. You know,
Yeah.
if I go take the highway home or take surface roads, like, I'm always imagine like some Herculean impact on your life
Yes.
doing the smallest thing. So it plays on that, instinct that we all have.
I think if we did that in real life, it would drive everybody crazy. So
Yeah.
I am glad that we have the movies to turn to and just kind of see how it would play out instead of us having to find out for ourselves. So yes, it's definitely on the top of my list. So we are going to go 1 year later to 1999, and this movie was just such a cute movie to me. I love Drew Barrymore anyway. This movie, Never Been Kissed.
Yes. Never Been Kissed is a 1999 film, as you said, that stars Drew Barrymore and Michael Vartan. Drew Barrymore plays a reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times who is sent undercover to find a story from high school. And her character Josie was Josie Grossi in high school, and she had a horrible experience. A terrible thing happened to her in high school. And so she's facing her demons by going back. And her older brother, who's played by David Arquette, was like the hero of high school, and he's in the opposite situation where he sort of can't get past his glory days and is working at a coffee store. And
it's like he peaked in high school.
Yes. So Drew Barrymore's character Josie goes back to high school and is investigating trying to find some story to come up with. And lo and behold, her new English teacher is the actor Michael Vartan, who, you might remember him from the TV show Alias.
Yes.
He is a very charming actor on screen, and they have an obvious attraction. There is a little bit of cringe factor in this film because he is behaving inappropriately when he doesn't know that she's an adult.
Yes.
There are just a couple of scenes where you're kind of like,
You're right. You're right. I thought about that. Yeah.
But for, the film, and you let it go. Drew Barrymore does what she does best in this film, which is be her goofy, adorable self. She is not afraid to look bad on camera, which is what makes her a great comic actress and what makes this film funny. Because, there's a scene when she eats a laced brownie and gets up on stage with the band, and it's just this horrible band. You think, it's every scene. She's not afraid of physical comedy. She's great at delivering a punchline. She's just, she makes the film, absolutely. Michael Vartan is really, I
think this is one of the few movies where she is, the star of the movie.
Yeah.
Because I think about some of her other romantic comedies where she shares the billing with like an Adam Sandler or Jimmy Fallon. Mm-hmm. But this was her movie to carry.
Yeah, no question. Yeah. And she does a great job. And I'm not like those Drew Barrymore, Adam Sandler romantic comedies, Wedding Singer, 50 First Dates. They're all good. They're not on my, best of lists. But this film is really almost more straight up comedy. And you get these little peaks of these actors who are going to become huge stars.
Yeah.
Jessica Alba has a small role. James Franco has a small role.
This was James Franco's film debut.
Yes.
Let's
And
see
you
who
can tell
else.
because
Molly
he's-
Shannon was in it.
Yes.
Octavia Spencer was in it.
Yes.
John C. Reilly, which I totally forgot he was.
And Molly Shannon, who is a treat whenever you see her in a film, gets mistaken for the sex ed teacher in a scene in this movie, and it is priceless.
Yes, it sure is. But yeah, go see this film. It is definitely worth your while. Okay, now we're going to go into the 2000s, and from 2001 we have the film Kate and Leopold. Again, Meg Ryan. This time around, she is paired with Hugh Jackman.
And this is a time travel comedy. It's not for everyone. It is very charming, very clever, and their chemistry, I think, exceeds her chemistry with Tom Hanks in any film.
Really? Okay.
He plays a character who comes from the past, which is, Hugh Jackman with his big Broadway background and his,
Right.
He's not afraid of a little, to ham it up
Sure.
in his Renaissance knickers or whatever.
It's Renaissance.
But he comes from the past. He, through a time travel portal and encounters Meg Ryan's character. And it's, as you can imagine, it's that same kind of humor of Splash, or, just someone from a different world analyzing the situation with fresh eyes. He, is obviously a bit of a sexist dude. And
yes, from the
Meg
18th
Ryan
century, we can
independent
expect that.
career woman, and it's just their little love story, how he helps her and falls in love with her, and how it resolves itself. And it's just I'm selling it short a little bit because it's so clever and so endearing. The acting is great. Liev Schreiber plays Hugh Jackman's best friend. The cast is incredible. It's just very worth watching. I was not expecting to like this film, and I was so pleasantly surprised by it.
Okay, well, call me intrigued, because really anything with Hugh Jackman I'd watch, and Hugh Jackman in Renaissance knickers. Hello.
He's very dashing.
So that is Kate and Leopold from 2001. Okay, same year, different type of movie, kind of, sort of, and we're talking about America's Sweethearts. Gosh, what a cast. Julia Roberts, John Cusack, Billy Crystal, Catherine Zeta-Jones, and the list goes on. Stanley Tucci, who another actor I love. But yeah, love this movie.
And this movie is strange. It never really got off the ground with people. There's a lot going on in this movie, but
There is.
I mean, I think it's fantastic. It's Billy Crystal plays a manager, a talent manager. And his big client is Catherine Zeta-Jones's character, Gwen, who was married to Eddie, who's played by John Cusack. They are in the process of a hideous divorce, to the point where John Cusack's character has gone off to an ashram to get through it. Catherine Zeta-Jones's character is having an affair with her trainer. I think it is played by Hank Azaria, who is, from the Birdcage to, everything
He is,
I adore. He's
wonderful,
so fantastic.
Yeah.
And when you think of a guy playing a personal trainer, Hank Azaria is not the actor that jumps into your head, but he's sensational.
That's why it works. That's why it's hilarious.
Yeah. And anyway, Catherine Zeta-Jones's character is difficult, and she's a prima donna, and she's self-indulgent, and she has her sister, Kiki, who's played by Julia Roberts, doing all of her little jobs and ordering her around and showing no appreciation and not treating her like a sister. Meanwhile, Kiki has always been in love with Eddie, the John Cusack character. So
her brother-in-law.
Sort of unfolding, right, her soon-to-be former brother-in-law, which is, it didn't really bother me in the film. So you just kind of go with it. But the manager, Billy Crystal, decides, in order to get some publicity for this very strange and very mysterious film they're working on that they will announce that the John Cusack character and the Catherine Zeta-Jones character have reunited. And oh my God, I mean, it kind of reminds me in a weird way of Noises Off on Broadway. Did you ever see that?
No, but I know of it. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yes.
A lot of misunderstandings and characters coming in and out, and really great comedy. Christopher Walken plays the director of this mysterious film that he refuses to show anyone before the screening. So
yeah, I love Christopher
added
Walken.
complication of what's on, what's actually on this time. It was supposed to be a time travel, futuristic sci-fi movie. Meanwhile, John Cusack and Julia Roberts are falling in love. There's all kinds of misinformation because the publicity people are putting out different stories, and it's a big comedy of errors, but it's really, really funny and very charming. And Julia Roberts, as usual, is her, own like endearing self. And I mean, really put Julia Roberts and John Cusack on screen together, it's kind of hard to go wrong. They're both just so likable. So it's
and I have to say, this movie, America's Sweetheart, is John Cusack at his hottest. We talk about him, just being lovable, not traditionally handsome, but in this movie, it's worth seeing because John Cusack looks hot in this movie.
He does.
So, like you said, it's a funny film, but it's just kind of like all these working parts going different places. Yeah. I don't know if that's really a glimpse into the screenwriter, who was Billy Crystal, wrote the script for this movie and what's going on inside that brain of his. Actually, Billy Crystal originally wrote the script for him to star in. He was going to be the John Cusack character. And he wanted his When Harry Met Sally co-star Meg Ryan to star opposite him. But apparently the studio and maybe Crystal himself determined that he was a little too old for the lead part. And so that's how he, decided to take the supporting role of the movie agent instead. And at the time, too, Meg Ryan was going through some personal trouble in her life. This was around the time that she and Dennis Quaid were going through a divorce. And I don't know if you remember, like right around that time, she hooked up with Russell Crowe.
I remember Proof of Life.
Huge scandal. Huge scandal. So she was probably not available. So yeah, that's the background of how this movie came to be.
And it is really interesting to have such a huge star in Julia Roberts playing the eclipsed sister to the movie star Catherine Zeta-Jones's character. It was a cute little kind of a twist.
I thought it worked out, and I just really thought it was a cute movie. I think it's because I loved all the actors in it, so yeah. I was determined to like it.
Yeah.
It's just a really nice, sweet movie.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of just really nice, excellent, sweet, romantic comedies, we have the final film on our list, and that is from 2005, and we are talking about Just Like Heaven, Reese Witherspoon and Mark Ruffalo.
And this movie is a little offbeat, but it is a fantastic film. We've talked about it before, in movies you might not have seen. Reese Witherspoon plays an emergency room doctor who's a workaholic, who is hit by a car one night, and her family is subletting her apartment as a result to the Mark Ruffalo character. Again, this is in San Francisco. And the apartment has, it's one of these beautiful, up on a hill in San Francisco with a rooftop, a rooftop garden. And Mark Ruffalo's character is a landscape architect and wants to bring the garden into its true beauty. His first or second night in the apartment, Reese Witherspoon's ghost appears to him, and she's very unhappy to have this strange man in her apartment, and the two of them strike up this very unconventional relationship where he is sort of falling in love with...
But like bickering.
They don't get along, but then they slowly get to know each other. And, you know, she's haunting his apartment.
Yes.
And, you know, there's some great twists that unfold throughout the film without, you know, giving anything away. And Mark Ruffalo has a character, his best friend, who's played by Donald Logue, who's another great comic film actor. If you've never seen The Tao of Steve, that is such a great independent film that he stars in. And it's just this kind of, it's a little madcap, it's a little suspenseful, not suspenseful, but, you know, like
you're trying to figure out what's going on. It was really, I thought the enjoyment of this film is just sitting there and letting it be and letting it unravel. As you watch and finding out, like you said, the twists and turns. You know, at face value, I didn't really put Reese Witherspoon and Mark Ruffalo together, you know, when you think about their previous work. And Reese Witherspoon had indicated in an interview that, you know, they were looking for a certain kind of actor to be able to really carry this role. It would have to take an actor with some depth of emotion. And of course, you know, we've talked about this in the past. Mark Ruffalo is that guy.
Absolutely.
And, you know, yes, this movie is a comedy, but at the same time, as you'll find out when you see it, you know, Ruffalo's character has some underlying poignancy, and he's got some stuff that he's dealing with, and it wouldn't have worked with just your standard romantic comedy actor.
Yeah, no question. I mean, the gift that Mark Ruffalo brings to the screen is this intense vulnerability as an actor.
Oh.
He is, you know, an open book. He's such a relatable guy to watch on screen, even though, you know, you would not describe him as conventionally, you know, with movie star good looks.
I think he's handsome.
Right. But that's sort of my point, is that, you know, he doesn't look like George Clooney or Brad Pitt, but he is in his own right this very compelling, very handsome guy. And he gets better and better looking the more he's on screen because he's that talented.
Yes, I think the vulnerability adds to that attractiveness factor.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you know, Ruffalo, apparently from what I saw, this was a bit of a departure for him when it comes to roles, you know, the romantic comedy. In fact, he said in an interview, he did this almost on a dare because he was told he couldn't do a romantic comedy, and he said, I'll show you.
You know, he's not a mainstream guy, really. He's not a romantic lead, but he is great in this role. And the two of them together, I mean, especially considering she's a ghost for most of the movie, is very, very charming to watch.
Wow, it works so well. It worked really, really, really well.
A tight, well-written screenplay on top of that. So it's, you know, because you start off this film and you're like, how on earth is this going to resolve itself? And
you'll be happy.
Wonders, very smartly written. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Since we are in the month of September, but you know, so far it's given us warmer days. We have yet to see those autumn temperatures. Debbie, we are presenting you with something cool for our signature sweet treat. But since we are dealing with romance, we have to make sure it is something chocolate. And so we have frozen hot chocolate. Woohoo!
Oh, that sounds great.
Yes, and it has been made into a classic frosty treat thanks to Serendipity 3 dessert shop in New York City. This is their most popular item on the menu, and it just takes minutes to make. Seriously, it's hot cocoa mix, milk, ice, and if you want to fancy it up, you top it with whipped cream and chocolate curls. And that is it. You throw it in a blender and you've got yourself one great treat. And then when those temperatures do drop for autumn, you can switch it up and make it a hot drink. also topped with whipped cream and chocolate curls.
And saying serendipity reminds me that that's also a very good romantic comedy that a lot of people haven't seen.
Yes, and that's why I thought of it. John Cusack. Another John Cusack movie, but I'm still sticking to it. I still think America's Sweetheart is where Cusack looks his hottest. He was hot in Serendipity too, but I just think because maybe he was, more like supposed to be a Hollywood type in this movie. Yeah.
Well, and we think of him as that boy, that wiry kid. And now, like in America's Sweetheart, which was, if you can believe it, 19 years ago.
Yeah.
He was probably in his early 30s. So he was really, more mature, and he's wearing it well, for sure.
Yes. So you can fantasize about sipping that frozen hot chocolate with John Cusack next to you. And as always, you can find the recipe on gazellemagazine.com. And a reminder to our Stir podcast fans, be among the first to know when a new episode drops. And it's really easy. You can do it by subscribing free of charge to Gazelle Magazine's YouTube channel. And you can do so by clicking on the Gazelle logo on the screen. So that's all it takes, one click, and you're part of an exclusive club. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to my binge bestie, Debbie Baldwin, for another great list.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
I will see you next week. Bye, Debbie. Bye, everyone.
Bye.